very good evening from wherever you're watching. This is Primetime News at Metropole TV. My name is Vincent Odhiambo. Now, airlines globally find themselves in uncharted territories trying to recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic at a time when the world economy is also battling a recession. As a result, most airlines are utilizing code-sharing agreements to strengthen or expand their market presence and competitive ability as well. This is as well as increasing revenues without having to invest as much. What are code sharing and how do they work? Well, our editor Mary Mwoki caught up with the Chief Commercial and Customer Officer at Kenya Airways, Julius Thairu, and had the following discussions on the code sharing partnerships.
A very warm afternoon to you. Thank you so much for creating time to join us here on Metropole TV. My name is Mary Mwoki, and today we are lucky actually to have a sit down with the Chief Commercial Officer at Kenya Airways, Mr. Julius Thairu. We'll be talking about code shares. Do keep the comments coming in. You can get in touch with us on our social media platforms. They're displayed at the bottom of your screen, and let's keep the conversation going. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mary. Good afternoon, viewers. Glad to be here.
All right. So maybe you could start with telling us who you are and what you do, and then we can take it from there.
All right. Julius Thairu, working with Kenya Airways. I'm the Chief Commercial and Customer Officer. Been with the company 21 years. Interesting title, why it's commercial and customer, is because as Kenya Airways, we are very deliberate about focusing on customer, because we actually think and we know that is the way we'll transform this organization to be the pride of Africa.
All right. So today we're discussing code shares. Maybe we could begin with you breaking it down for us. What exactly are code shares?
All right. If you allow me, Mary, maybe to step back a bit. Also, to talk a bit about what's happening in the aviation industry. We're just coming out of a pandemic, 2 years of really painful period for airlines and of course for countries and for businesses. Good news is we are starting to see recovery. People are starting to travel. And why this is important and links to the conversation we are having is because what COVID has taught us is we need to relook at our business models, because we need to be sustainable businesses. And so as for Kenya Airways, we are relooking at our network, we're relooking at our partners. And for us, partnerships, where code shares fall into, is one of the strategic pillars that we have. And we are confident it will accelerate our growth and recovery as an airline. So to go to your question, basically, if I break it down, a code share is basically a business arrangement or a partnership arrangement between two airlines to publish and sell tickets on the same aircraft. So, for example, we do not, let's say, operate between Amsterdam, Geneva, Paris, Geneva. As Kenya Airways, we only operate from Nairobi to Amsterdam and to Paris. So we have a code share arrangement with both Air France and KLM to be able for passengers to travel to Geneva, but on a KQ designation and also on a KQ flight number. So that's basically the arrangement when it comes to a code share.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe to digress a bit, what happens if I've booked to Amsterdam, or rather I've booked to Geneva, and then we get to Amsterdam? So take us through what happens.
All right. So if I start from the actual buying process for a customer, so a customer will either go onto our website, or they will walk to any of our offices, or even to their preferred travel agent. They will ask to buy a ticket all the way to Geneva. And then they will be offered the possibility of doing that on Kenya Airways between Nairobi, Amsterdam, and Geneva. So they'll buy the ticket. The ticket will be one ticket. In that ticket, we will show clearly that between Nairobi and Amsterdam, it's Kenya Airways operating. We'll also show the connecting time. How long are you on the ground in Amsterdam or in Paris to connect then onto Geneva? We'll also ensure in that arrangement, other than getting one ticket, also when you check in your baggage, it is checked all the way to your final destinations. And all the benefits during that travel are also very clear. for the customer. So when you buy, then you are almost as confident as when you buy a ticket, let's say Nairobi, Mombasa, and you know it's Kenya Airways flying you between Nairobi and Mombasa. Yes.
Why would you say code shares are maybe important for an airline vis-a-vis just, having a route to that destination?
Okay, fantastic question. Code shares are actually very important. One, because there is no one single airline in the world that can fly to every single destination. That is impractical. It also doesn't make business sense, and it would require a lot of capital, financing. So code shares offers an opportunity to actually expand your network, to create a virtual network that meets then the customer needs. Because for a customer, when they come to Kenya Airways, they want Kenya Airways to take them to wherever they are going. So the biggest benefit of code shares is that it actually allows us to take a customer to points that we do not serve, but in an economic way, because we do not need to make all this capital investment for the customer to get to their final destination.
How would you say they affect pricing, ticketing, commission, taxes? I need you to explain the money factor.
All right. And another very good question, because ultimately, we have to provide value for the customer. And if we look at many of the attributes why a customer chooses to fly or, different airlines, of course, price is always there on top. So one, the beauty about code shares is because you are not making a capital investment all the way to the final destination for the customer. So from a cost perspective, that is already a saving for you. So from a pricing point of view, there is a behind-the-scene agreement between the two airlines on how they share revenues. So for Kenya Airways, we try to get, of course, the best commercial arrangement we can, so that we can pass on that benefit to the customer, which then should mean competitive fares. We're not flying to that destination, but we should be able to offer competitive fares. When it comes to maybe the seats themselves, because of course that's not our aircraft. We also ensure in the arrangement that we will negotiate to get real-time seats, what we call real-time availability from that airline. So when a customer is buying, if let's say we have a promotional fare, so that promotional fare is not just available on Kenya Airways, it's also available on the other carrier. So those would be some of the benefits. And then again, as I had talked about baggage, which I think is very important for customers, ensuring also when we negotiate, we are allowed to have the same baggage allowance for the customer until the end. And the final one is also, we know especially from Kenya, from Africa, there's a lot of group travel, people going on conferences, people want to book as a group. So we ensure also when we get into these partnerships, that is also an aspect that is considered, again, so that we're able to sell a group and it's not split. Sometimes it's difficult because the other airline could be operating a smaller aircraft, but we ensure that is considered as we are setting up the arrangement.
So maybe you could tell us what goes into making that decision. Do we seek a code-share agreement, or do we just start flying to that route ourselves? From where you sit, what are some of the things you consider, some of the factors that come into play, and then you say, no, let's just start flying to that destination, or no, let's seek a code-share agreement with someone who's already flying to that destination? What goes into making that decision? Okay,
another brilliant question. I think what we first look at, and we are always driven by what is it the customer wants, really listening to the market, voice of customer, but also using data and insights. Where are the customers going? And let's say, for example, we realize Geneva is all of a sudden a very important and popular destination for Kenyans, for Africans, maybe because of businesses, because of UN, or so be it. Then we size that opportunity to tell us whether it makes sense for us to deploy our own aircraft or to fly ourselves. Because remember, that is capital investment. We might not even have the aircraft. We might even need to go out in the market and get an aircraft. So the prudent thing to do is, what we would do first is get into a code-share arrangement. Look at who is flying there. How are customers today getting to that point? And for example, again, using Geneva for just clarity, Air France and KLM are our partners. So we would then sit down with them, negotiate an agreement that allows us, of course, to be able to serve that destination. So that's how we would go about it. So it's driven by what is it the customer wants, also the size of the market, because we are a commercial business ultimately. And we establish a code share sometimes with the hope that one day there is enough demand or commercial reason to operate ourselves. A good example is New York. You know, we've for many years been partnering with especially Air France KLM. That is how people have been getting to New York. You had to go through Amsterdam, you had to go through Paris, or through the other carriers. But it was clear after years, and with Kenya opening up, Kenya becoming the regional hub, there was enough commercial business sense to have a non-stop flight. And so we, further to the codeshare arrangements that we have, we decided to also operate ourselves to complement that and to give the customers more choices when they're flying.
So would it then be safe to say that code sharing is a way of, you know, trying out that route to see if it makes sense and sense also?
In a way, I wouldn't fully agree with that because on some points we know for sure we do not want to operate, because also where we operate is also driven by our positioning. What's our purpose? And for us, our purpose as Kenya Airways is to drive the sustainable development of Africa, you know, contribute to that sustainable development of Africa. We really know opportunities are here in Africa, and that's why you see, of course, companies, airlines, everybody wants to be in Africa, because 10, 20 years from now, Africa is the place to be in. So when we are making decisions on where to fly or where to codeshare, it needs to align to that purpose. So there are destinations that we know there is business, but we prefer to codeshare because that is the most economic way to serve that destination. But there are certain destinations, like again, if I give example of China, Guangzhou, why we decided to fly to Guangzhou, it was because clearly it was aligned to our strategy in Africa, you know, driving, opening up economies in Africa. And, you know, with all the traders flying into China, people making a living. So we actually felt we are linked to the purpose. So, yeah.
All right. So how do you have parameters in place to actually evaluate and see, is this code sharing working? Do we need to drop it? Do we need to just, you know, decide to fly to that destination?
Yeah.
Do you have those checks and balances in place?
Yes, we do. We are mainly driven by two key factors. One is the value creation for the company, and it goes hand in hand with also the customer benefit, which we use parameters like market share, customer feedback, so some quantitative and some qualitative to inform our decision. But value is also, of course, important because ultimately we want the code share to be valuable. So we would normally work on a business case, so clearly showing what is the value to the airline, to the customer, and then we use that to track the benefits throughout the year. And that business case is then what we use probably down the line. It can be 2, 3, 10 years down the line to then make a decision probably to operate on our own.
Okay.
Yes.
What would you say are some of the code shares that are currently working for KQ?
All right. We have, pre-COVID, we had about 23 codeshare partners. So again, links very well with our partnership drive. And also the fact that our network in Africa is probably one of the best, if not the best network, the most dense network in Africa. So everybody, of course, is interested in working with us because then we do sometimes the last mile to where the customer is going. So we had 23 codeshare partners. Post-COVID, now we've reinstated about 18 of those codeshares. Most of them are working quite well. Some of them, we are still waiting for the airlines to increase either flights into Nairobi or for us to increase flights into their hub or their airport. But if I give just examples of some of the codeshares that are working or have worked very well, of course, with Air France KLM, I think for a long time, customers could not even sometimes tell who they are flying, until you get to the airport. Of course, we are mandated by law to disclose that. But that code share from a customer point of view was working very well because it allowed a customer to choose either to fly in the morning or evening, irrespective of who's operating. We are also expanding our code share partnership with Delta. We fly to JFK, but we know US is a continent. So flying to JFK is not good enough for our customers. So we need a partner in an airline that allows us to reach the whole of the US. So that's also working very well. And maybe the last one I can just comment on is, of course, within Africa. South African Airline, who is not just a codeshare partner, we're just about to establish codeshares with them, is a strategic partner. We are looking at transforming aviation in Africa by setting up a group airline in Africa. It's been mandated and supported by the two governments all the way to the two presidents. And it's a journey, and from 1st of June, we'll actually be activating code shares that allow us to expand the network we are offering to both of our customers, especially within Africa.
All right.
Yep.
And speaking of South Africa, that's a very that has always been, you know, quite an intriguing partner, if I may call them so, because when even as you go into these code sharing agreements with them, are you discussing the issue of visas? Because I know the dynamics that are in place there are really something else, especially for Kenyans getting, you know, the South African visa. So is that something that you people factor in when you're entering into that partnership?
Most definitely. We look at barriers. You can call them barriers of entry into a market. What are the pain points for the customer? Because for us, we don't just look at ourselves as transporting the customer from point A to point B into South Africa. We want to understand why you're going to South Africa. How easy is it for you to travel to South Africa? So in fact, the discussion or the issue of visas has always been on the forefront. South Africa is one of our best routes. We fly 3 times a day. And good news is, I think it was maybe 5 or 6 months ago, finally, after a lot of discussions, negotiations between the two governments, Kenyans are finally allowed, first of all, to do an e-visa. So you don't need to go to the embassy. Already we knew visa fees had been waived. So now the process has been made easier. People are actually getting 3-year visas. Like the last time for me when I applied, I got a 3-year visa. And that will only help in accelerating, especially travel between these two continents. And that's a vision between the two presidents, the two governments. And that is why it is clearly seen, and you can see the benefits of having these two airlines work together, and especially, you know, have synergies between the two hubs. In fact, my own vision, is at some point we'll have frequent flights into South Africa, probably 6-7 flights a day, connecting the two hubs, making it very easy to travel both ways. But we have to continue removing barrier of entries, and also not just focusing on visas for leisure travelers, but also thinking how can we empower economic activities between the two countries, because that's a driver for travel. And in the last meeting that happened, that was chaired by the two presidents, in fact, there was that discussion. I know it is going on, looking at how can we enhance trade between the two countries, which then accelerates also travel and benefits airlines. Yeah.
Okay. You know, do you have scenarios whereby you have code sharing maybe with South African Airlines, for example, and they end up stealing your customers?
Okay, that's a good one. It happens, and I'll be very honest about it, because ultimately customer has a choice. And it does happen. And I can tell you the way I view it, and the only way you can stop that is be the best from a customer experience point of view. Because the customer will leave you because they've flown South African Airlines and they found there is better service on board. When there's a disruption, they are better handled, they are communicated better. So they will only leave for a certain reason. So I think the only way to mitigate that is to try as much as possible, listen to your customers, what is it they want, connect with them. But indeed, it happens. If I actually expound on that, the other way to actually mitigate that, but for the benefit of the customer, is to enhance your code share arrangement or that business arrangement. So the way to do that is there's a provision in the law that allows you to get approval from competition authorities to work together to enhance the service and the products that you're giving the customers. And in fact, in our journey with South African Airlines in the partnership, this is even one of the things we are going to do. We had that, what is called antitrust immunity with KLM. that allowed us actually to discuss all the offerings. You know, what are the baggage rates? What are the the fares that we're going to charge? And the only thing competition authorities requires, and they keep checking, is that you do not use this to create a dominant position that then at the end is not of benefit to the customer. Allows you maybe to just like increase fares. So it provides for that.
Is that a discussion you actually have and say, hey, you know, we're getting into this, but please don't steal our passengers, or you just leave it to God?
No. We have that discussion, and it's not really about stealing customers, because why we are getting into this partnership is to make the cake bigger. Because if you look at even projected stats by IATA, COVID is just a blip. By 2030, travel will have doubled. There's going to be so much travel. If you look at Africa continent, it's the biggest continent in the world. It's also the most underconnected continent in the world. If you think of the amount of money governments need to build roads and rails, if we are to follow US or Europe or Asia model, it's impossible. And why should we do that? When we should just more focus on building airports, airstrips, but trying to connect Africa through air. And I'm happy that, of course, there's two big agreements or policies that are supported by African Union and all the African countries. SATAM, that is the free travel within Africa. But also there's the free continental trade. So both open skies, I think SATAM, the best way to describe it is open skies, allowing travel within Africa by African airlines. And then there's the free African continental trade that also removes barriers for trade. So with this, we should actually accelerate more travel. So in our engagement with South African Airlines, I can honestly tell you that we're not discussing about stealing customers. It might happen with one or two. Again, customer decides what experience they're looking for when they fly. But what is driving us is that, you know, there is so much business that we can actually stimulate, not even just take from competition, just stimulate by offering better connectivity and connecting, especially Africa. People will travel. And the key thing, of course, customers are asking, and I know probably you'll ask me that question, is of course costs. Also, one of the key reasons why we are coming together is economies of scale to ultimately lower our unit cost and then pass that benefit to the customer so that we can also be a competitive airline, because you can't stimulate travel with a high price.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So how can African airlines leverage code sharing to, you know, achieve inter-African connectivity? How?
Yep. I actually think for me, code share is a good first step towards ultimately the big disruption that we need in Africa. In Africa, we've got very many airlines. I've even lost count. I'm told that there are more than 300 airlines. I mean, every country wants to have its national carrier for good reason. You know, we are all proud of our heritage, where we come from, and we want to be associated with an airline. So, but that doesn't help, because when you don't have economies of scale, then you cannot have a sustainable business. Africa, even in 2019, all airlines were loss-making jointly. There were a few airlines that were profitable, but in total, Africa actually brought losses in a year that was the best ever for aviation world. So that already gives us impetus to think of changing how we approach, especially aviation. I think code shares is a good step, but we should actually be more bold and more disruptive, accelerate the partnership and get more into consolidation, because I think ultimately that's what will make sense. And what I can align more with that or give an example, it's what happened with mobile penetration in Africa. Africa, we were left behind when you thought of laptops. Everybody had laptops, but what happened in Africa? Because we skipped laptops. You didn't need laptops, and we just moved to mobile phones. So code shares are good, but if we could even either do that more quickly or skip that step and go to consolidation to build then sustainable businesses that actually give value to the different countries in Africa.
So let's look at the code sharing partnership with Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
How is that coming?
All right. We just announced some good news that we've extended our code sharing. We had, of course, stopped it because of COVID. In the past, we used to fly to Jeddah. We stopped flying that route. But we partner with Saudia because Saudia is part of SkyTeam. And so they give us actually access into Jeddah, into Riyadh for our customers who are also coming from the different countries in Africa that we are operating to. Also, the code share will benefit us by Saudia also bringing customers into our network in Africa from Saudi Arabia. So I have good hopes for the code sharing. I think it will go well. It has gone well in the past. And also key is this year, especially Hajj is expected to be big because of the world is opening up, and a partnership with Saudi also allows us to also get charter operations. So even if we are not doing scheduled flights into Jeddah, the fact that we are partnering with Saudi gives us an opportunity also when there's a lot of traffic, we can get charters so that we are also able to take people into Jeddah and Medina.
And maybe to follow up on that, how do we ensure that these code share partnerships are not, one-sided, that we also benefit from it and they don't benefit from it more than we do?
Okay.
Sort of an imbalance like we see with trade. How do you?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, a good question. When we go into this arrangement, we look at it from a Kenya Airways point of view. And we don't really look at it from the other airline point of view. Again, like with Saudi, if I use that as an example, we know, especially around Hajj, there's big movement. Our own customers, the same customers we fly within Africa or to other points that we serve, we know they want to go for Hajj, but we do not operate to then Jeddah. Then we use, of course, this partnership to, of course, give that possibility to our customers. And again, also, as I said, things like charter opportunities. So the way we safeguard that is we really look at it from our point of view. What is it that I'm going to benefit? What is it that my customers are missing from the network I'm offering? And then who is the most likely partner for me to work with to then meet those customers' needs? And then the rest becomes a negotiation. Whoever negotiates the best sometimes gets the yes. Yep.
Okay, so especially looking at the European market, and at a time when the world is lifting these restrictions and people can travel and do business, have code shares sort of increased our footprint from where you sit? Do you think they are working, or is there more that needs to be done?
Code shares are working, and again, that's a good question, because I like giving examples so that it is factual. When we restarted flying back to UK, and UK is one of the routes that recovered the quickest, we also at the same time engaged with British Airways for a partnership because for many years we had only been serving London, and we couldn't take passengers, let's say, to Manchester, to Birmingham, to Liverpool, to all those other cities in UK. And because for us, especially to accelerate recovery, partnership was key for us. We engaged British Airways, even though they belong to a different alliance, so it was not easy. And we actually got into a code sharing arrangement where we gave them about 12 points behind Africa, so they are able also to serve points that they don't serve. And then we were able to serve especially the whole of domestic UK. We've really seen that accelerate recovery on the route, and we are doing even better than we were doing pre-COVID on London route. We are actually from 5th of June doing 8 flights a week, so moving from from daily that we were doing pre-COVID. So despite reduced demand in many of the other markets, you can clearly see partnership helps actually drive growth and accelerate recovery.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a code sharing partnership with Delta Airlines. Has that opened up, the American continent to KQ and its flyers, maybe?
Yeah, to some extent. We are still on the partnership journey. We've agreed on a roadmap. So we've not quite gotten to the end. We want to cover the whole of the US. We currently only have a few points in the US. And this is also because in your earlier question where you asked how do you ensure you're getting value as an airline, so also Delta has to look at the same. And so far, actually from, I think in June, we'll be further adding 3 points in the US that will also help, with customer reach. So that's going slower than we had hoped. I think we'll even be meeting Delta in Doha. There's IATA AGM taking place next month to try and accelerate that. But at the same time, we're also looking at other airlines we can work with in the US, because there's no, let's say, exclusivity in terms of partnership. You, again, look at who can give you value. You can work with multiple partners. So we just activated a basic partnership with JetBlue, which is mainly a domestic airline in the US. And this already is giving us reach on many points that we didn't have before and benefiting our customers. I've received some really good feedback from some of the customers who've flown, and they've actually said, first of all, JetBlue is a good airline, and it's really a good partnership. And also it was reported in the media, though they reported it as a non-stop flight to Minnesota by Kenya Airways. I was happy about it, though it's not really a non-stop flight, but it's a partnership with JetBlue. Though it's not a code share, but it's a basic, what we call interline, so it's at basic level. And then for code shares, we are doing that with Delta.
Okay.
Yes.
If you look at East and West, China and America and the European market, where do you get more value for a code sharing partnership?
Okay, that's a tricky question. All right. For now, I would say we're getting, of course, more value from the West. And why is that? It's because of if you look at the quantum of travel from West, whether it's leisure, whether it's business, still West has a lead when it comes to travel to Africa. But having said that, we also have been seeing an increase in of course Chinese travelers, and especially if I just speak of China, into Africa. I think there is more awareness of what China has to offer. Business-wise, of course, China has been doing business with Africa for long, but also business travel needs to be complemented by leisure travel, which is, I think, the piece that is missing. But I also know, and we've done this before, in partnership with KTB, in partnership also with others in China, targeting China, to also create awareness that indeed Africa is a fantastic place to visit, not just to do trade or to come build roads. You can come and go to Masai Mara and enjoy yourself. And the good thing with that is that per spend in the world, actually Chinese travelers have the highest spend. So it would also really ultimately benefit Africa if we could get more Chinese also traveling here.
All right.
Yeah.
Finally, is it hard to sell a code share agreement as KQ to established markets, and not just as KQ but as an African airline trying to penetrate those markets that are already established? Is selling a code share agreement a tall order?
No, it's not. First, I think it is a concept that customers are already used to, depending on also the partners that you work with. That actually helps the perception or the brand perception. So like, for example, we saw partnering with Delta. Delta by far is rated the #1 airline in the US. So the fact that we're in partnership with them, that gives confidence to certain customers who would maybe take time to understand who's Kenya Airways. But for them, they say, let's say whether it's Citibank or whoever, the big corporations, they say if you're really working with Delta, then you're a good airline. So there's also that benefit that comes with code sharing, but it depends also on who you are partnering with. And that's why for us, when we are partnering with someone, there is, yes, the commercial aspect that I've spoken to, because that's my forte, but also operationally, there are things like safety, security that need to be looked at. We don't partner with any airline that is not IOSA certified. It is a requirement. So there are things that we look at, and then also it needs to align also with our values and what we want to do as an airline. So I wouldn't say it's hard. I see more benefits, and the few difficulties that you have are things that we are able to manage, and we try as much to keep those away from customers. Maybe just the last thing I would want to comment is where there's sometimes difficulty. It's from a customer point of view. if the customer journey is not well thought through. And then you could have baggage issues or things even with liability. What happens if my bag is lost? What happens if there's a disruption? Who should contact me? Who's taking care of me? And those are things that we incorporate also when we are discussing code shares. It's things that we need to do better as KQ, but also as airlines. And with SkyTeam, there's already a project where they are doing digital connections among all the airline members so that ultimately customer does not feel pain. It's a seamless, frictionless travel for the customer irrespective of who's flying. So still some work to be done by airline.
And maybe just as a follow-up to that, because you mentioned that it's easier to penetrate the American market because people are saying if you guys have an agreement with Delta, then maybe you are reliable. How has the KLM partnership worked for KQ?
Okay. I knew you would ask that. Okay, KLM partnership existed for a long time, 25 years old. In fact, it's one of the oldest partnership in the world. It was a disruptor. Yeah. And there were obviously benefits to the partnership. KQ footprint, of course, in Europe increased. There are many points that we started serving that we could not have been able to serve ourselves if we didn't have that partnership. So from a customer point of view, it worked very well. And the fact that we were both flying into each other's hub, Amsterdam, Nairobi, we fly different times, so then the customer has a choice and they can fly anyone. And then you also have different experiences for the customer in terms of, let's say, service on board. So it worked well and served us for many years, but also it reached a point, and just like with any partnership, you need to evaluate, and also you move to a different level that you either want more or you feel you could do more, and in that moment, that is where we actually decided, and when COVID hit, that it's better we pause the more strategic partnership and we more focus on just the commercial partnership. So we still continue with code sharing with KLM, but what was paused was more the strategic partnership, equity ownership, and many other things that came with that strategic partnership. So I just wanted to be clear that we still continue to work from a commercial point of view. Right. So today, if you want to go to Germany, any point in Germany, we're able to take you there either through Amsterdam or through Paris, through our code sharing partnership that we have with Air France and KLM.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's been
Thank you very
insightful.
much. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Mary.
All right. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all we had time for. Do keep it here, and let's keep the discussion going on our social media platforms. My name is Mary Mwoki. Do enjoy your afternoon.